Get my email.
No, I didn't, but Lisa did say that she could forward that out.
Yeah, Commissioner Pollock, I'll forward it. I have the version, the one you sent before. Did you update it since then, or is it okay to send that one?
I did not update it.
Okay, I'll send it right now.
Okay, because it did say the email went. So
Is this something we're supposed to read for tonight's meeting?
no, I'm going to talk about it and then you can reference it.
Okay, we can read it later. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, are we ready, Shelby?
Yes.
Okay, let's come to order and welcome to the December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Salem Planning Commission. Shelby, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Augustine?
Here.
Commissioner Griggs?
Here.
Commissioner Heller?
Here.
Commissioner Kopcho is absent excused. Commissioner Levin?
Here.
Commissioner McKinley?
Here.
Commissioner Pollock?
Here.
Commissioner Schweiker?
Here.
And Commissioner Slater?
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Shelby. Moving on to the consent calendar, Commissioner Schweikart, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve the meeting minutes from the December 1st meeting, I believe it is.
Great. And do I have a second?
Seconded by Levin.
Second by Levin. Discussion on the motion. All those signify by saying aye when Shelby calls your name. Shelby.
Commissioner Augustine?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Heller?
Aye.
Commissioner Levin?
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley?
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock?
Aye.
Commissioner Slater?
Aye.
And Commissioner Schweikart?
Aye.
And Commissioner Kopcho is absent.
Thank you, Shelby. All it approved. Move on to item. We have no resolutions. We have no action items. I'll move to open the public hearing on item 5.1, which is case number CPC NPC ZC 20-09 for the 700 block of Lockwood Lane South. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare or ex parte contacts on this case? Seeing none, only see a few faces. But and then in the statement
Sorry,
of
I have I guess not an ex parte contact, and I want to declare
Commissioner
This
Levin.
is Commissioner Levin.
Okay, I can't see your picture. And you're so cute. You should turn your picture on. There you are.
There you go.
Sorry, there's my video. No, I have a pre-existing working relationship with Clutch Industries because of their ownership of commercial real estate assets in the Salem area. However, we are not working in any way on this particular project. I just have an extensive relationship with the applicant, and I want to declare that going into the hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Any other ex partes or conflicts? Seeing none, Shelby, would you please read the statement of criteria on this case?
This is a public hearing to consider a comprehensive plan change, neighborhood plan change, zone change, case number CPC NPC ZC 20-09 for a property located at the 700 block of Lockwood Lane South. The criteria applicable to this application are found in the Salem Revised Code, SRC Chapter 64.025 E2 for comprehensive plan map amendments, and 265.005 E1 for quasi-judicial zone changes. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing with statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Planning Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Boards of Appeals, LUBA, on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. The Planning Commission will then either continue the public hearing or leave the record open for at least 7 days.
Thank you. Brandon, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Here, I'll share my screen. Okay, can you all see that?
Yeah, we've got it.
Great. Okay. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Brandon Pike. I'm a Planner 1 with the Community Development Department. And tonight I'm here to discuss case number CPC NPC ZC 20-09 for property at the 700 block of Lockwood Lane South. At this time, I would like to request that the staff report, attachments, and this presentation be entered into the record. The applicant is requesting to change the comprehensive plan designation from single-family residential to multifamily residential, to change the neighborhood plan designation of the Sunny Slope neighborhood plan from single-family to multifamily, and to change the zoning from RS or single-family residential to RM2 multifamily residential. No site plan review application is included with the request, so specific development plans would come later at the time of development. Here's a vicinity map of the subject property and surrounding area. The property is approximately 0.15 acres in size, or roughly 6,600 square feet. Currently, it's mostly an undeveloped grassy area, but it does have a small storage building, kind of a large shed on it, which is used by the apartment complex to the south. The property, as you can see kind of right here in orange, it doesn't have street frontage, so future development at the site would likely take access through the property to the south, and that would be via Lockwood Lane, which is a local street. Other major streets in the area are Liberty Road South, Browning, Ewald, and Idlewood. Here's the comp plan map of the area. Currently, the property is designated single family, and the applicant is requesting that it be changed to multifamily. So it would be incorporated into an existing cluster of multifamily land to the east. Here in the zoning map, you can see that the property is currently zoned RS, with the applicant requesting a change to RM2. Here's a 2019 aerial photo of the area. Again, the subject property here in orange has no street frontage. The property to the south in blue here, which is developed with an existing 12-unit multifamily apartment building and associated improvements like this parking lot. That's under the same ownership and provides the only access to the subject property. So one thing to note here that was noted in the staff report, since the subject property's only access to a street, since its only access to the street is through land zoned RM2, the subject property cannot be developed with a single family use. This is because the RM2 zone does not allow new single family dwellings except under some very specific circumstances. So while the subject property is zoned for single family development, it can't currently be developed with a single family home without receiving some sort of relief through the zoning code or by changing the zoning as this application would do. Here's a 2019 photo of the property from Lockwood Lane. So you can kind of see it in the background here, the grassy area with the storage shed right there. And again, the applicant would plan to use this access here to serve future development at the property. As addressed within the staff report, the applicant points to these key factors in support of their request: that the proposed comp plan and zoning designations are equally or better suited for the property, that the surrounding land use pattern with single family residential land to the north and to the west and multifamily residential land to the south and east makes the request appropriate. And the request addresses some of the issues highlighted in the city's 2015 housing needs analysis, including the surplus of single family residential land and the shortage of multifamily residential land. In terms of testimony received, there was just one joint inquiry from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon and Housing Land Advocates, which asked that certain items be addressed within the staff report related to Goal 10 findings. Otherwise, no comments were received from the neighborhood association or the surrounding residents or property owners. As outlined within the staff report, staff believes the proposal first conforms to the city's comprehensive plan and statewide planning goals. It provides for the logical urbanization of the land. Future development at the property can be adequately served with utilities, and impacts to the city's transportation system from any future development will be negligible. So staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the request as proposed.
Thank you, Brandon. Questions of Brandon at this time? We'll have another opportunity later using the raise your hand feature. You've been very thorough, Brandon, because, a hand, Commissioner Pollock. Commissioner Pollock, you're on mute. We can't hear you. You need to undo your microphone.
Yeah, I kind of messed up and I got lost here somewhere. Anyway, a couple of questions. When I looked at the applicant's information, when they went to the neighborhood association, they told them that there were going to be there would be like 4 to 6 units, but I see that the minimum amount is 8. So exactly how many units are proposed? Do they know? Do you know?
So there's no specific proposal for a number of units. I'd have to consult the staff report again, but I don't think the minimum was 8. I think if it's developed with the existing apartment development to the south there, then the maximum would be 8 on this lot, because there's 12 existing units on that neighboring property. And in total, the 2 sites at a maximum could allow 20. So 8 would be the absolute limit.
Okay,
but I think, the applicant has indicated that it would be fewer than that.
Okay.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Pollock?
Yeah, I did, because I'm trying to look for that section of the staff report.
It's at the top of page 7.
7, okie dokie, top of page 7. Right. Okay, so it says here the minimum of 12 units per acre. Oh, it's in another place. Okay. Also, I wanted to I wanted to clarify for the record. They also were concerned that the renters got notice, but we revised. But our notification codes were revised to where both property owners and renters got notice. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And so therefore all property owners and renters would have gotten notice of this proposed land use action. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, everyone within 250 feet of the property.
Okay, I just want to make it clear because that seemed to be a concern of the neighborhood association.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless I find my section, I'm gonna relinquish this to whoever wants to ask another question until I find what I'm actually talking about.
Sounds
Bye.
good. Commissioner Schweikart, you're up.
I only raised my hand to try to clarify what Commissioner Pollock was looking for. So the way that it's written, which I think is actually pretty clear, is that if they were just to develop on just the piece of designated property that we're talking about right now, then they could do 2 to 4 dwelling units based on the minimum and maximum of the RM2 zone. However, if they were to redevelop the entire site with the inclusion of the proposed property that we're talking about today, then they would have an addition overall of 8 units on top of what is out there right now. So what's out there right now, there's 12. So an addition of 8 would be 20 total. So there'd be 20 total units that could be built if you combined what's already part of under ownership of this applicant and the newly designated piece of property.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Schweikart. Unless somebody's screaming that you're incorrect, I'm going with it. Other questions of staff at this time? We'll have another opportunity. And not seeing a hand raised or Brandon screaming that that's not correct, we'll move to the applicant. Would the applicant like to address the commission? And as you probably know, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Brad Kilby. I'm a senior planner with Harper Hoff Peterson Regelis, and I'm the applicant's representative on this project. Could I share my screen?
Sure.
And let's see here. Here we go. Thank you. Can you see that? Well,
Not yet.
If I
wish I could be more help, but I don't know how to do this.
no, I will. I think I have to share screen 1.
So once you click on the screen that you want to share, you have to click the button at the bottom right that says like share. It doesn't automatically share when you select the screen. You have to then say, yes, this is the screen I want to share.
Share right there. Is that better?
Yes.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. From the beginning. So this project is a 0.15 acre request to rezone a site that is right off of Lockwood Lane. And it is, as you can see in the image here, part of the larger apartment complex just south of the site. This type of development is what we in the planning world right now refer to as the missing middle. So these are smaller apartment complexes on smaller lots that integrate well into single family neighborhoods. You know, I guess they were pretty common. You saw a lot of missing middle type developments happening in the 60s and into the late 70s. And then in the 80s, we went into the larger apartment complexes that you see sometimes on the really large apartment complexes throughout the area. What this does by allowing the missing middle to develop, so these smaller properties to develop or redevelop, allows them to stay within your housing inventory, allows them to be developed with more units, and affords the property owner some additional income, and still provides a type that allows at a variety of prices. You're not paying for all of the amenities and things that you might see at a larger apartment complex. These are courtyard type units. And to the point about the question of whether or not we could do more than 8 units or 6 units or 4, we really don't know yet. We have other things that we also have to accommodate on site, stormwater quality. We have to provide parking and trash and landscaping and screening. So those things also dictate what the number of units we would be able to get onto the site. As Brandon had mentioned, the properties to the west or to the east are zone residential medium 2, and to the south, and then across Lockwood Lane, that's also zone residential medium 2. They're adjacent to Liberty Road, which is, as you know, a thoroughfare that gets people to and from different locations. It's about 12 minutes from downtown by bus. So there is transit service available. There are already existing utilities out in Liberty Road South, which also goes to help serve higher intensity uses. The Salem Area Comprehensive Plan designation shows it as single family residential, which is somewhat strange. I don't think that there's ever been a single family house on this. In speaking with the owner, it's always been storage associated with those apartments. And so I'm not necessarily calling it a mistake on anybody's part, but oftentimes, as you know, when you go through a zoning or comprehensive planning process, individual owners don't really get involved. And I think that, at the time that this was zoned, it probably should have been zoned similar to RM2 to keep with the apartments directly south of it, because that's the only way it's going to be served by automobile and pedestrian access is through that site. Our proposal is to rezone the site to residential medium 2, consistent with those properties to the east, amend the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan to allow it to go from single family to multifamily, and then, as Brandon suggested, amend the Salem or the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Plan, which shows this area as residential single as well. If approved, this area would become part of the residential medium 2, and the owners can entertain whether or not they want to redevelop the site. That is not part of what they're doing right now. And then if it was, the comprehensive plan would then also make it multifamily as opposed to single family. We met with the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association on October 15th. If you read the materials that we submitted, there were no major issues raised about the site being rezoned. There were questions about how many units. Obviously, I mean, people are always concerned about additional traffic and impacts to the neighborhood. And then, as Commissioner Pollack said, there were neighbors that indicated that they would like to be notified of the request when it came in. And it sounds like, at some point, the city made a conscientious effort to notify not only the owner of the property, but the tenants and residents within those properties too, which is a good thing, because when you're starting to talk or impact residential medium, apartments at any density, it's always good to keep those folks informed because it affects their livelihood as well. The evidence in the record suggests that we have findings that it's located within the existing UGB, which makes it a timely request. It can be served by the extension of nearby public utilities, and the affected agencies raised no concerns in their reviews of the application or the request. It's suited for multifamily residential development based on the topography of the site. It's flat, so it would be easier to redevelop. It's not a slope site where you would have to build into the slope, and it could integrate well with the existing apartments to the south that are also owned. And by the way, very well maintained by the owner. It's consistent with the applicable requirements of the Salem Code, the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan, and the statewide planning goals. And the most recent housing needs analysis, which shows that there is actually a surplus of residential or single family residential land in the city of Salem, and a deficiency of multifamily zoned land within the city. And just an important note, the applicant or the owner of this property owns several of these small properties around town. And we've seen you once before about rezoning portions of that. They're just trying to get everything in line for any point that they would want to update or remodel, redesign the sites, and develop and maximize the potential on their properties. The required amendments are in the public interest based on the surrounding neighborhood planning goals. They're not inconsistent with the planning goals or any of the city's goals and policies within the comprehensive plan. We respectfully request that the Salem Planning Commission accept the findings and conclusions of the staff report and approve the proposed amendments. And just so you know, myself as well as the owners are in attendance tonight and available to answer any questions that you might have. With that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brad. Questions of the applicant? And reason, let's see. Okay, I think I've allowed enough time. Thank you, Brad, for your presentation. Now we have questions of staff, another opportunity if you want any clarification from Brandon on anything that we have heard tonight. If you could raise your hand and indicate. Commissioner Pollock.
I want to thank Commissioner Swinehart for that explanation. It did basically say that because of the total ownership, that the maximum is 8 units that could be built. So thank you very much for that explanation. It was on point. And yeah, that's about it. I don't have any more questions. I just wanted to say that I reread that and heard her, and that is exactly what I was looking for. What would be the maximum that could be on that? And it's 8. Thanks.
You owe her a cup of coffee or some tea.
I do. Or
Yes,
Christmas candies.
There you go. So any other questions of staff? I'm not seeing any hands raised. So with that, I will look to Commissioner McKinley for a motion.
Madam President, I move that we
Oh,
adopt the
I'm
report.
closing the hearing first. All right, close
No.
the hearing. Okay, now Commissioner McKinley.
Madam President, I move that the Planning Commission adopt the staff report.
Do I have a second?
Second by Levin.
Second by Levin. Discussion on the motion.
Wait, raise my hand.
You got to raise your hand. Yeah. Commissioner Pollock.
Okay. So, here's where, I'm always saying land is unique. But in this case, my goodness, this piece of property is landlocked. It's, because of the RM2 conditions. I mean, I find the the argument of equally or better suited not only compelling, but basically it's like the only thing we can do if we want to utilize this for in future infill development. Plus, obviously, it's in line with our the need analysis to reduce our surplus and gain more multifamily. But I mean, I don't see how we could do anything but this, because I mean, otherwise, what would it be used for? So I'm going to support the staff's recommendation to approve.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the findings are pretty clear on this case. It's a pretty clear cut. Commissioner Swikart, followed by Commissioner Levin.
I just wanted to bring up that I may be the reason why your inbox received yet another email about this case this morning, with the communication that was back and forth between the city staff and the joint Fair Housing Council of Oregon and Housing Land Advocates, because I had asked for that letter that had been provided by them. There was some email communications and then a formal letter provided by them. And then as a follow on to that, I had asked Brandon and Lisa about the housing needs analysis, just asking kind of a more universal question regarding the housing needs analysis, given that it's a document that applicants that are looking to do comprehensive plan map changes and zone changes frequently cite as their kind of justification for adding multifamily acreage, changing to multifamily acreage, I should say. And so, I think it might be helpful, since we do have 3 members of our commission that have joined us not too long ago, to understand why in this staff report, as well as other staff reports, when we're talking about the housing needs analysis, why we say that the city council has accepted but not adopted the document, because it's, to me, a kind of a confusing technicality that it might be helpful to understand why we talk about it in that way, and how it's okay that we use it or applicants use it as a justification, even though it's not adopted.
So Lisa, do you want to address that during administrator's report, or do you want to address that now?
I think it's better probably under the planning administrator report and not deliberations, if that's okay.
Yeah. Since we've already had questions of staff. Commissioner Levin.
I'm going to support the motion. I think this is really well handled by staff. I'm impressed with the concise application and report by staff. I do wish that when something was this obvious, that it, even though it's a zone change, that there was some administrative way that applicants didn't have to go through the planning commission to get something that's maybe this obvious. Is no, like if they were trying to develop it as housing and create an access drive, that I could see having more land use application technicalities to it that would require then a planning commission hearing. But other than that, I just think overall it's looks like it's the right decision to make.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Schweikart?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I agree with Commissioner Levin's comment, and I wonder if there would be some sort of qualifying language that, you know, with regards to common ownership of the adjacent property with the same zoning that is intended, something that would perhaps be a way to help have these types of very simple cases be under the administrator's decision making rather than having to come to the planning commission, because I just think, yeah, it's extra time and energy by the applicant that you know, seems excessive for the subject matter.
Agreed. Commissioner Pollack?
I think that we need to defer that conversation off of this record, maybe on the discussion for the good of the order, but because I don't agree, but I don't want to hold this hearing up for that because that has nothing really to do with this applicant. So I was wondering, maybe if we can, after this is over, we can talk about this.
Sure. We
Thank
can
you.
do that in the good of the order. Any other comments in discussion on the motion under consideration? And I am not seeing any other hands raised. Shelby, will you call the roll and please signify by saying aye if you're in favor of the motion?
Commissioner Augustine,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Heller,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
Commissioner McKinley,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollack,
Aye.
Commissioner Schweikart,
Aye.
and Commissioner Slater.
Aye.
And Commissioner Kopcho is absent.
Thank you, Shelby. Moving on to special orders of business, the Marine Drive conversation. Dr. Chandler, are you leading this one?
No, actually, sorry there. I'm sorry, kind of like, oh, where is he?
Julie's-
It is my pleasure to introduce the person who will be answering most of the questions,
Perfect.
which is Ms. Julie Warnick, our Senior Transportation Planner. And we really don't have a presentation. We gave you a report, had three very illustrative pictures in the back. And we're here to answer any questions you might have.
I thought that was a great report, very concise. My understanding is, correct me, the takeaway is that now under consideration is the access from Fifth Avenue, not from the southern one, correct? Nope.
Good, Julie.
No. Let's see, can I share my screen so I can point to a map?
And then I'll show you where I got that.
Let's see, let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen here.
It says on June 10th, 2019, council approved the following motion that the funds blah, blah, blah will be used to acquire right of way from Marie Drive between Fifth Avenue and Riverbend Drive Northwest.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just still trying to find my window here.
That's where I was getting that from.
That's for the acquisition, but the
Okay.
actual, you know, there is still there are still plans for the street. Okay, I'm just going to share this. See if I can figure this out. That's not going to work. Sorry.
And Julie, while you're that acquisition was actually an acquisition specific to the Streets and Bridges bond measure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because we
So that
still
was
require other properties with other funds. It's just that was a limitation on the bond money.
Got it.
right. So but the actual street in the transportation system plan, the future street comes down and joins with Glen Creek. I'm sorry, I'm Shelby. I'm not doing so good with the sharing thing. Let me
You want
try
to go
one more
for it,
time.
Julie, which one do you want? Which attachment?
I want attachment 1, just the
All right.
basic map.
Wait.
Hopefully you can succeed better than I was succeeding.
Well, we'll find out in just a moment.
If you don't, I'll try one more time.
And let me know if you want me to jump in too.
Okay. My problem, I was seeing a gazillion screens to share and none of them were the ones that I was trying to share.
Yeah, it has all of the screens and then every single separate application that you have something open in are all
right.
choices.
So does this look like attachment 1, Julie?
I don't see anything yet.
Does anybody see it? Oh, wait. Share. There we go.
Oh yeah, now you're starting to share.
Okay,
All right.
there we go.
There we go.
Yes, that looks like attachment 1.
Oops.
So the future Marine Drive is the collector street alignment that extends from River Bend at the north, as Robert is using his mouse, comes down, and it continues along the edge of the park there to Glen Creek and a little bit south. The 5th Avenue connection is a very short connection from where 5th and Cameo intersect up to Marine Drive. So the council direction for this use of the Streets and Bridges bond funds was from, not from there, was from the intersection of Marine, not from there, intersection of Marine Drive and 5th, there. From that point north to River Bend was the, it was council direction for use of those funds. And so the Real Property Services section of Urban Development Department has been actively working, contacting property owners to see if they're willing to sell. And so far has committed, I think about half or maybe a little over half of the available funds to a number of purchases. They still have some conversation going, I think, with a couple other property owners. And so depending on available funds and willing property owners, because we don't have funding to construct at this point, we would not be looking to condemn property. Eventually, the goal will be to find funding to complete acquisition and construct all or a portion of the roadway. Some portion may come through development, adjacent properties. If it connects to the Harrod where it currently exists, we would want to get that constructed with the development. If it would just create sort of a standalone island, I guess you could say, of roadway, we usually have that would be deferred. So that's really where we are. The total amount that was allocated in the Streets and Bridges bond measure was approximately $3.6 million. The last cost estimate that we had done for constructing Marine Drive was acquiring and constructing was close to 23 million, I believe. It was in the staff report. So obviously there's going to be a need for some additional funding, whether that be through a future bond measure or some through development exactions, possibly through system development charges. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Commissioner Pollack, followed by Commissioner Schweikart. You're on mute, Josh.
So I'm going to start with the couple and then I'm going to let other people go and then I'm going to come back with them. On your report that you gave to us on the section that's 2008 Street and Bridges bond measure, it says the 4th line, it says Public Works conducted survey and completed initial design on the section of Marine Drive between Glen Creek Road and Cameo Street. one of the things that I was really concerned about, oh, and it says here, and then the city council said that funds would be available to acquire the right of way between 5th Street and Riverbend Road. One of the things that I'm concerned about was the roundabout. I mean, you didn't address it in this, and I had made sure that you guys had known that one of the things that I had discovered is that there was a proposal at one time for there to be a roundabout at Riverbend Road. And I think because of the traffic there's a gravel pit out there and there's some heavy big trucks coming in and out there. There's been a lot of building between Doak's Ferry and the end of the urban growth boundary. And so I think that would be useful to have could keep a flow of traffic going. And I'm also going to try to do some research, and because there's some indication there that now with the increased population and the multifamily in Wallace, there's a possibility that chariots might extend their small buses out that way too. So I mean, to keep the buses because this is supposed to be a sort of alternative to move traffic, around like the service areas, that I think it would be a great thing to have, but that would acquire more property to be acquired. So is your design does not include acquiring property for the roundabout?
Correct. The design is the alignment that was identified in the transportation system plan back in early 2000s. The roundabout at a potential for a roundabout at the intersection of Marine Drive and Riverbend Road was identified through the Salem River Crossing study, the third bridge, because that would have brought in quite a bit higher traffic volumes on Marine Drive. And so the roundabout concept came out of that. City Council chose not to adopt that. And so therefore that concept has not been approved by council. And it's not part of the transportation system plan. That said,
you said council chose not to adopt that. What they didn't adopt was the third crossing.
Right, and the third crossing, having a roundabout at this intersection was part of that overall package. So it was not, that was not adopted. Now, go ahead.
And I do understand that. However, yeah, and that does answer my question. Is there anything that would prevent us from asking that be added to the design?
Whether you do a traffic signal or a stop controlled intersection or a roundabout is something that, really all sort of can fit within the design details of a project. One of the complicating factors here is that particular area is outside of the urban growth boundary. And so it would require a larger expansion to the urban growth boundary or goal exception from Polk County if we went with the roundabout as opposed to going with a smaller intersection. So okay. I guess it's not outside the realm of possibility, but we're not currently, set up to do that. I think it would require some traffic analysis to determine if that would be needed. And I think we might need to be a little closer to do that analysis.
Okay, so the urban growth boundary issue is a question. I'm going to defer now this to somebody else, and then I'm going to come back because I have several other follow-up questions.
Okay, Commissioner Schweikart.
Hi, thanks, Julie. Thanks, Robert. I think one of the things that I was most interested in was on the page where it says Marine Drive Northwest in relation to the UGB and city limits, the second paragraph in that section, kind of understanding how this plays into future annexation decisions. So, this in conjunction with then looking at attachment 3 and realizing how much of the route that we're talking about falls outside of the city limits, and how, I guess my question is a very broad question. Is there a preference that the city has with regards to whether or not we want to move forward with annexation prior to construction of the road infrastructure? Because seeing what would have to happen if we didn't annex, it seems like that would be quite the quite difficult and complicated to be having to work under a different set of jurisdictional standards in a very piecemeal way as you move the road from the Willamette River up to River Road. So I just wanted to hear about that.
So I'm going to try to share the screen yet again with that, so we know what we've got in front of us. Let's see if it works. And is it there?
Yes.
Yes.
That would
Yeah.
be attachment 3.
And one of the other issues of annexation is sometimes it's really straightforward, because if you want to get any water or sewer services, you got to annex. And so a lot of, if someone's going to develop that's going to incorporate Marine Drive and they're going to develop water and sewer, they need to annex in order to get our services. The other issue is areas that are not annexed, but if we happen to acquire them, then as the report said, basically we have to follow Polk County's rules for construction.
Right. So
You
it would seem to me that it would be a much more complicated project and kind of, a pain in the rear to have to, as you go along, in this kind of zigzagging route that we're taking, go from our rules to their rules to our rules to their rules, back and forth. So I guess I'm just wondering, is there a strategy in place for prioritizing the annexation, so that way we can just universally be able to use the city's standards when we get to the point that we can actually build out the street infrastructure?
I mean, I think the goal would be to have the street annexed, along with when development is coming forward, and then it could be built to city standards. I can envision a possibility where we get enough development activity that maybe we have a short segment that maybe is outside of the city limits, and that it's a critical link, to get you from this development to this development, that maybe we could move forward with that construction just to to fill the link until it's annexed. But at this point, we don't have any strategy like that because there's still too many gaps and there's no funding. So Robert, would you want to add anything to that?
Gaps and funding and gaps in funding. Yes, perfect.
And so Lisa, I know it's kind of a, we're looking at a very long-term, long-range effort here. But can I just understand really just briefly what the process is by which the city can propose or initiate an annexation versus like a developer proposing a development that requires an annexation?
Absolutely. If the city can initiate an annexation of somebody's property over their objections, but then we have to send it to the voters if they're not the ones applying. If the owner is applying, we're actually prohibited from sending it to the voters now under the kind of crazy annexation laws we have. If we already own the property, that would be easier. We could initiate it and then it would just go through council and they could annex it. We do have an annexation policy that when property comes in, we try to annex land, any of the roads around it that might be, fronting it. We try to annex any other property that would make sense next to it, we reach out to those folks and say, hey, your neighbor's annexing and they already paid for that application. Do you want to throw in with them? And you can go through the process for free. Most of the time they say no, because, then they're just going to pay higher taxes. So it's not usually a benefit to them from their view, unless, they want to develop. So we do, I know a few annexations come to the Planning Commission when there's a comp plan zone change, but we do quite a few more annexations than that. Most of them don't need that process. And so they just go straight to council. But we haven't done any city initiated annexations in about 4 or 5 years. We went through and got all of the island properties, that were completely surrounded by city limits. We went through and got all of those over about a 5-year period. And so now we just process generally annexations where folks are wanting to get water, sewer, and develop, and we process those annexations. So we could develop a strategy. Obviously, if we had funding and the council was ready to go on this street, we would take a more serious look at what we needed to do and what properties to annex to make it happen, and try to get it all, like you said, all in the city, because that would be easier for us.
Right. Can I ask a
Slight
follow-up? Does it complicate it when it also has to be expanding the urban growth boundary when it's both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's very complicated.
So those segments, which are smaller segments, in attachment 2, there's smaller segments that are outside of the urban growth boundary, but it seems like that those spots are actually going to be maybe of the most challenge.
Correct. And there's generally 2 ways to go about that. The city could do UGB expansion and move the line, which was part of the Salem River Crossing project. That's what it was a UGB expansion to make the lines match up, not only for Marine Drive, but for the 3rd bridge. Or instead of moving it, the city could do a goal exception to build outside of the UGB. So they're both basically kind of the same process. You're just addressing different state criteria. They're a lot of work and difficult and subject to appeal. So
okay.
And there are a lot of people who object to it for reasons that are surprising.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. What did you say?
Oh, I said there are a lot of people who object to UGB expansions for reasons that might surprise people.
Are you good, Commissioner Spiker?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Pollock.
Okay, first I'm going to address the UGB. There was an attempt to extend the UGB for the Marine Drive, but thing is, it was connected with the bridge project, and there was so much for and against the bridge. It couldn't be separated. So the thing is that I want to make sure that everybody understands that Marine Drive will not alleviate the traffic. It's what my understanding from my research, that Marine Drive will not alleviate the traffic at the bridgehead. This is only about local access and moving around traffic, moving around in West Salem. And so I was, one of the things that I was taking a look at, and that actually Commissioner Swihart had asked this of us, and I'm hoping that you guys that you were able to get my copy of my research and the attachments, because she asked for population and employment growth, and then also she because she thought that would be useful criteria in us looking at things, because it is a lot of work, it is a lot of money, but how do you motivate this? Like I had said, well, there's a lot of building and everything like that, but the population growth and how much of that, how much of the undeveloped land is being developed in West Salem is really a very moving factor here, because it says the population in what I got, let's see, if you look at it, I'm not going to quote the sources, because if you have my memo, it's on there. The population in West Salem has grown from 13,670 in 1993 to 20,000 in 2005, an increase of over 50% in 12 years. Over the next 25 years, it is forecast to more than double the Salem. It says here, the Salem Kaiser UGB population forecast contained in STSP reflects that in 2035, the population will have doubled to 43,463. Again, the Marine Drive is trying to get some of that traffic off of Wallace and go through the backside for those that want just to access the services over, the permanent Kaiser, Roth, paints, banking, dry cleaning, all that stuff without, and then hopefully alleviate some of the stuff that comes in and hits that congestion at the bridgehead. But so the thing that really just stuck out at me is exactly what Commissioner Swigart is, that it's almost like it's the cart before the horses, that the UGB really has to be, I think, is a real big factor with, if we can, go and expand all that area so that we can start to really go forward on a Marine Drive. And that's one of the things that I was thinking, that maybe that we could focus in on maybe discussing more about whether we want to do a letter or something that just sort of pushes forward, but making it very clear that expanding the UGB is not connected with the bridge. And it's only about moving traffic around West Salem. And so UGB expansion is one of the things that I really wanted to kind of push forward, that maybe we as commissioners can sort of like write letters or talk to people or something about making that kind of happen.
Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the background that Commissioner Pollock has given on this, and the perspective that she's providing, and some thoughts that I would add to those. When I look at this from my background, I see an opportunity, and there appears to be a large tax base that if the city was to invest in the roadway, the development would shortly follow, especially having the numbers that Commissioner Pollock provided about the future growth in West Salem. I'm curious if the city has done a cost versus benefit analysis of bonding and paying for the road, or doing something like a reimbursement district for this portion of West Salem, so that as development happens, the city gets repaid for the roadway. I guess that's my first question that I have, and I'm not sure if I think I have a follow-up, but if Julie, if you could answer that, that would be great.
No, we haven't done such an analysis.
Follow-up, Commissioner Levin.
Would the city consider doing that, or have they ever done that with other roadway considerations?
I am not aware of having done a reimbursement. Well, I guess we recently did one related to Lone Oak, maybe, Robert?
We've done some reimbursement districts. The difficult thing is, I mean, you can do them. The challenge is saying, well, you benefit this amount by this project, and therefore you need to contribute this much when you develop, and that can be quite controversial, even on a much lower project than all of Marine Drive. I think, Commissioner, the main thing that stands between us and building more Marine Drive is money. And that money is unlikely to come through reimbursement district, and you still need to get the money up front to do it. What we really need is another bond measure that has Marine Drive incorporated into it as one of the facets. And there are a number of talks about, what's the next bond project for the city, or are we going to do combined bond? We can talk more about that at some point, but really what's needed is another major bond focusing on Marine Drive. And just a quick note, Councilor Pollock's got it right on, is that Marine Drive was in the books, almost now approaching 25 years, well before the bridge was there. It's no longer related to the bridge. It was internal circulation, and the idea is to draw traffic off of Wallace Drive. So it's still valid, still absolutely valid. It still carries some of the burden from having been connected with the bridge, but it's still necessary, absolutely.
Are there any conversations, Robert, on the bond measure?
So yes, but without getting too far into the evening. So among the things that need to be bonded of a project, we've seen, of course, the library, police facility. In the queue include firefighters need new apparati. There's a need for a major bond to support parks. Another bond for some water projects, perhaps wastewater or stormwater projects, reduce risks of flooding, and bonding for transportation, streets, bridges, etc. The big discussion going on is, do we do a series of bonds, 50, 100, 150 million over the next 10 years, or do we do one big bond and saying this is going to be it, residents for the next, pick a number, 10 years. And so you have one large bond and you work your way through it. There's some discussions and there are merits to both those. But there are a lot of things in the queue for bonding.
So nothing we're going to see soon.
If you define soon as in the year 2021, I would say no.
Okay.
But I could
Commissioner, thank you, Robert. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. Just following up on the conversation on Marine Drive being local access for West Salem. I believe that one of the biggest reasons that we receive complaints about the bridge is the lack of local access roads for West Salemites to utilize services, and therefore they are all funneled to Wallace Road. I would support a letter to City Council from Planning Commission saying you need to prioritize this road, because from a development standard and a land use action standard, what we have seen not over the last year, but over the last 6 years is a constant increase in demand on Wallace Road by West Salem residents. That is alleviated by another route that provides access to services to West Salem. So I think that's really important. And then I also want to say, regarding the roundabout issue, it is, if you look at the hard numbers on transportation intersections, whether it's a signalized stop, a hard stop, or a roundabout, roundabout is the safest for all people at the intersection, and it is the lowest long-term cost for the owners of that intersection. And every time an intersection is made, it's owned by the city of Salem, which means that we, the people, are paying for it. And I do not think it's appropriate for any city planned road to show a signalized intersection because of the future long-term costs on the citizens. Any of those roadways that are designed and planned by the city need to include a roundabout or a lower cost long-term option for the residents. Thank you.
Julie, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, one of the things that I think, will be important is, before moving forward with an urban growth boundary, either amendment or goal exception, it will be important to confirm, particularly up at that north end, that the configuration of the intersection is what we want. Because if we do a UGB amendment without a roundabout, for example, then we have to do another UGB amendment to get more land. So whereas if we do a UGB amendment for a roundabout, maybe you could build something smaller, maybe. So anyway, I just think that's one message that's probably important to do. This particular roundabout did have to be very large when it was being, when the concept was being developed, because of the gravel trucks. It needed to have a radius that was, it was a large roundabout to accommodate that use.
Okay, good point. Commissioner Pollack.
Okay. So I like what Commissioner Levin said. I totally agree with him. But one of the things I wanted to clarify now, one of the arguments about Marine Drive taking alleviate some of the pressures on Wallace Road. My question to you, Julie, is currently Wallace Road performing their performance standards? Are they within acceptable level? Is it within acceptable levels identified in the transportation, Salem transportation plan? Is Wallace Road currently operating within acceptable level, or is it not?
Typically where we have, areas not operating within acceptable levels are going to be at intersections. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I would hazard a guess that the intersections of, Taggart and possibly Glen Creek, Edgewater probably do not meet the operating standards. And of course, this is also a state highway, so it's the state operating standards.
Oh, right. Okay.
But of course, congestion is just one thing, one element, and that would be at the peak periods.
Well, and the reason why I point this out is that if we're going to send a letter to the council, it'd be useful for as much ammunition if we can, get, one is the population. The other one that I did that's in my memo, but I didn't talk about was economic growth. It's the economic growth really is in West Salem's not going to be as much. I think about 1,000 jobs within the next, 20 or something years. It's not a whole lot, but it's so it's mostly the residential population area. But if something is not if something on Wallace Road is not operating to standards, and this might alleviate the traffic that gives, like Commissioner Levin said, get some of that traffic off of Wallace Road, then that certainly would be some justification and rationale for us going forward and asking the city council to reprioritize. Wallace Road is one of the top priorities, but yeah, it's top priority, but it's moving like a turtle top priority.
Well, do we know what the priority of city council is on Marine Drive? Do we know where it lands? And
let's see, it's on the they're on the transportation plan. I'm gonna let Julie address this, but it's the part that I know is in my memo. So, but I'm gonna let her address it.
I'd have to look. I believe it's probably a high priority project. Unfortunately, we do not have a what's the right word? We don't have a regular funding source for transportation projects. So we don't have. It's not like with water and sewer, utility rates. With transportation, we pursue grants, we have bond measures, we have system development charges and how those get allocated. So we don't have just like a list that says, okay, this is number one. We have a lot of high priorities throughout the city, and we do not have anywhere near the funding capacity to construct them.
would it probably be good, Commissioner Pollock, to find out if it is in that high priority category? We wouldn't want to write a letter asking them to put
No,
it.
it is. It's already, I have it on that first page. It says, currently Marine Drive is listed among the high priority committed street improvement project within the Salem transportation plan. And I had it attached to, and it says, high priority projects constructed is needed within 10 years. And it's actually on the list. If you look at the transportation plan on the electronic copy, you'll see that it's in there. And again, so it's already high priority, but it's, funding.
Right. I mean, we have many projects that are on the list that say needed within 10 years. And unfortunately, we do not have a funding source that can support that.
Yeah.
Other
But-
discussion
I'm
amongst
sorry.
Commissioner Pollock, did you have a follow-up?
Pardon me?
Did you have something else you wanted to add?
Well, and see, that's the thing though. If we talk about all the things that are going to happen in the future and what's happening now, and that it is a top priority, then it should be then a top priority to city council to go and do something about getting the funding for this. Because how many times did we have the neighborhood association come in front of us, basically didn't even want development because of Wallace Road? I mean, they were like one step from trying to get a moratorium on development. And of course, that's not good for anybody. And so, you know, I just think that when you have like 43,000 people on this side of the bridge, and they're saying like, hey man, do something, because that's 43,000 people that vote. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You know, in hindsight, I wish I'd had this information or more of this information when I did my annual report to city council, because that would be a very good talking point to bring up in that discussion. So I'll make note of it for sure to do it next year. But just where we're seeing all the traffic and all the complaints on any proposal that comes in front of us in West Salem, it is the traffic flow. So bringing up the Marine Drive as a priority would be a good point. Other comments, discussion? Commissioner Slater.
Thank you. I guess one thing I'm struggling with as I look at the Marine Drive issue is what are the other priority projects, and how do we as a commission decide whether or not we want to pick out just one of those to focus on? I mean, if we were to write a letter, for example, would we then say, we looked at this issue, we support it, but we don't have any context for the other competing priorities? That would seem strange to me to pick out one without having a conversation about the context of the rest of the priorities.
It's a good comment.
Yeah.
Discussion on Commissioner Slater's comment. Anybody want to? Commissioner Pollock.
Yeah. A couple of things on this one. It's not unlike that we can't do this for other roads. That the other road that comes to mind is the one that came up not long ago that floods. Oh my gosh, it's the one out near the airport.
McGilchrist.
Not
McGilchrist.
Is it?
Yeah, McGilchrist from Pringle over to 25th. That has been a very high priority of the city in trying to get funding. We have gone to our regional funding partner through the federal government and we have funding allocated for right-of-way acquisition and for one small segment of construction where the intersection of 22nd and McGilchrist.
Because see, that one's really dangerous because of when the flooding happens, it is absolutely, and there's not, I think on the one side, not lighting enough and stuff.
Yeah. So, but it is a good point, you know, that Mike Slater made in terms of we do have a lot of high priorities throughout the city, and we have very limited funding opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is that this is Commissioner Slater, the thing is that it's almost every time something comes up with a multifamily in West Salem, the neighborhood comes in really, the neighborhood comes to us and just basically sort of questions, you know, why are you doing this when we can't even get around as it is? Now, you know, I'm living in 20 years of California. And so I know what it is to sit in traffic for 2 hours just to get from Orange County to LA. And that's on a good day. So, you know, I have a different perspective about the time waiting, and it's not, and to me, it's basically, you know, only peak periods of time when it's a really problem on Wallace Road, but still based on the growth on this side of the bridge. And the thing is because it takes a bridge to get on the other side, you know? It's like the chicken that crossed the road. I mean, how are you going to get on the other side, you know? Only these two little lanes that go over the bridge. So, and see, that's why I say that there are top priorities, but like I said, you know, McGilchrist comes to mind because to me, I think that's a real dangerous thing. And on this side, it's because it's the features of the land that keep 43,000 people from getting over that bridge. I mean, it's not really that at one point, all that, but you know, it's something to consider about how many people we're trying to move across that bridge at any length of time. So that's my argument about why these two would be, you know, if they're top priority, why these two might need our focus more than maybe the others.
Other comments? I think at a minimum, the discussion's been very good at just making sure that we're all on the same page on the Marine Drive. Because I, for one, didn't have all the information that you have, Commissioner Pollock. I don't know if I would feel more comfortable about doing a letter of any sort if it wasn't already considered a high priority by council, and it is the funding issue, and we can't just manufacture funding.
No.
And if they're in discussion on the bond measure issues, like what will be our next bond measure, what will it look like, what will it encompass, then I think at that point, and those are public hearings during the budget process, right, Robert? Would that be a public discussion? Then maybe that's when we pipe up and say, boy, I really do hope that there's some consideration on McGilchrist and for the Marine Drive. But at this point, I don't know, unless somebody else thinks differently, if there's an action item coming from this discussion right now. And I'm looking for hands.
Wait, say it again. My mind went off. What are you asking
again? Want me to say again? I said so much.
Just the last portion.
The last part. I don't think that now I don't see an action item to take at this moment.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on discussion? Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Julie, for your presentation and your comments.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And I love your light, Robert.
I can actually make them start twinkling and do other things too, but I thought that might have that sort of, planning commission hypnosis going in.
Yeah, that might be distracting you.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on to planning administrator's report. And Lisa, I think you've got a couple of items you might want to hit on. The one, the easy cases. Kim, how do we do, put those through administrative review rather than having them come here? And then, let's see, what was the other one? Oh, the housing analysis.
Great. Sure. Thank you.
Take
and
it
I
away.
wanted to start by introducing Tom Kapani, who is the
I was
attorney. You're like, who's that person? I know. I meant to introduce him at the beginning. He wants to turn on his camera. Hopefully he will.
Yeah, there he is.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
I was getting really excited not having a lawyer at the meeting, but I guess we have one.
No, you guys need one.
We sure do.
Well, I'm going to be taking over for Natasha along with Dan Atchison, at least initially. And then, once he feels that I have my legs under me, then I'll be soloing. So I'm looking forward to working with you all. And I know I've got a lot to learn, and I know you guys are going to provide me with an education about planning and the process. And so,
where are you from?
I've worked for the city now for 13 years.
Oh, okay.
I have been advising public works for the last 4 years, and before that, I was a prosecutor for the city.
Great. Well, it's really nice to meet you. Nice to have you on board. I would have behaved a lot better had I known you.
Very, very well. Don't you have nothing to worry about?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, and Tom has worked on land use stuff with us because he does work with public works, so he's familiar. Then we'll get him there. He'll get us there, I think. About the housing needs analysis, Commissioner Schweikart had asked, and I don't think I sent the response to the whole commission. So two things. I think we talked at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago about Commissioner Pollack asked about updated data, you know, for how many acres are being added, how many units, and kind of showing the math. And so we've done 3 memos now. About every 6 months we submit a memo. The last one was in May. So we're going to do a new one in January once we have the December data. So we'll send that out again, and it's you know, a full, if you remember, memo. It talks about the acreage, where we're at with that, and any other progress that we've made on the work plan. We're making lots of good progress on the work plan that the council adopted. And the reason they adopted a work plan and not just adopting the housing needs analysis, which was Commissioner Schweikart's question, is that under state law, if your housing need analysis shows that you have a deficit of land, either for single family or multifamily, ours is in multifamily, then you have to address that deficit before you can adopt the housing needs analysis into your comp plan. It seems backwards to me. I know when our consultants told us that, I'm like, wait, so we convert all the land and then we don't have a deficit, and then we adopt the document that said we had a deficit? Like, that seems wrong. And they're like, yeah, that's how it works. It was unclear, but there was a court case, McMinnville, somebody appealed McMinnville. It went to LUBA, and LUBA was very clear that that's the process for it. And we did go to DLCD and get a written opinion to make sure that they agreed that that's what that court case says, and that's how you do that. Because Eunice and I just kept saying, like, we just don't think that seems right, but it is. So the flip side is our economic opportunities analysis, which looked at our commercial and industrial land. We did adopt that, even though it shows a deficit of commercial land. So there's just no requirement under state law that a city provide land for commercial and industrial. It's just kind of our choice. And those studies are a little different, that in some ways you get to have more aspiration under the study looking at commercial and industrial land. So because of that, you can end up having a deficit if you're saying, well, we aspire to have land for a new hospital. We don't have that land, but we want that business to come. And so, of course, then you can't say, so we're going to have a hospital, but we need the land, so we need a UGB expansion, right? So some of that is like, you can't self-determine those things just with your own desires as a city. For housing, though, you know, there's certain rules about what you project, who's going to come here, what kind of housing they're going to need based on their income and what kind of housing is being built in the last 10 years. And that's where the deficit, how that's calculated, it's all very kind of set out. So, but through our Salem, we are addressing that need. So when we get to the end of our Salem and the comp plan is adopted and the map changes are done, we won't have a deficit anymore. We will address that deficit. And so maybe this time next year, if not a little bit sooner, then the housing needs analysis will be adopted. It will be part of our comp plan. That doesn't mean people won't be able to get a comp plan zone change to multifamily. It is really easy for them just to look at our HNA right now and say, oh, you have a deficit, you should support this. But we do have policies in the comp plan about where we want multifamily to be, and we're working on those through the new comp plan. So there will be an opportunity for people to come in and say, even though you don't have a projected deficit, this piece of land is appropriate for multifamily for these reasons, and do that kind of analysis. So that's where we'll go with that. And let's see. Oh, you asked. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Oh, administrative, like a zone change or something. I don't think under state law there's any, you know, definitely not for comp plan change. So if they don't have the right comp plan, just because the criteria, some of the criteria are that you comply with the comp plan policies and also with statewide planning goals. And those are so open-ended. Really, the way the level of applications is determined is based on the level of discretion. And so the decisions that I make some and they don't go out for notice, and that's because there's no discretion. And then I make some that go out for notice, like a subdivision or a zoning adjustment. And so there's no public hearing, but we send it out for notice, get comments, and then I make the decision. And that's because there's a small level of discretion. But really, state law has determined that something like a zone change has such a high level of discretion that the criteria that cities get to create themselves are so vague that you really have to have a body, either a hearings officer, planning commission, or council, having that public hearing process to weigh the evidence. to issue a decision.
It's a good idea.
It is a good idea. It might put you out of a job, but it's a volunteer job anyway. I will say though, through our Salem, we have had people that we're doing outreach with suggest their property for a different designation, and we are taking that into account. So there are some people that were changing their property because, you know, like in this example where it just makes a lot of sense. And that isn't an application they would need to apply for, right? We're doing it with our map. So we have been asking people as we meet with them too, if you have map changes, and sometimes people show up and say, I do, and it's my property and it's here, and this is why it should be something else. And so we have those conversations with them. So that's one way to get a free comp plan zone change. So if anybody's watching this and they have some land they want redesignated, you've got the time, the window is dwindling, but give Eunice a call and discuss it with her. So.
I like how you punted on that one.
Yeah. That's all I have. I don't think we have any items, Shelby, for our first meeting in January 5th. I think the deadline has already passed for that, correct?
Yeah, so there was an item on the agenda that was tentative, but it did get pushed to the 12th, but it might be withdrawn. So we might not have anything for the 12th either, but I'll keep you guys updated on that. But as far as January 5th, canceled, so.
So Shelby, and could you send out, normally we get a list of the dates for the hearings for the year.
Yes, I will make sure to send that out tonight, actually. Thank you.
Well, that doesn't, you don't have to do it tonight, just sometime.
Okay.
Before next.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. And then I don't know if Commissioner Slater had a question for you, Lisa, on your last comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
or and Commissioner Pollock.
Oh, we got Pollock too. Yeah, I kind of shut everybody down. Commissioner Slater followed by Commissioner Pollock.
Lisa, could you speak to this issue that I've been just starting to read about on parking minimums and reductions or striking down parking minimum requirements?
Oh, sure. You mean in the recent headlines like today and yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's part of House Bill 2001. So that was the law adopted a year and a half ago, I think, that basically eliminated single family zoning, as the headlines say. That requires cities to allow duplex, triplex, fourplex, cottage clusters, and townhouses on land zoned for single family. So the law is, pretty broad or basic, both. And then the state DLCD staff came up with rules that would, further implement or explain how cities have to implement that. And so the rulemaking process has been going on for the last year. Very long, intensive meetings with a huge committee. One of the Salem staff was on the committee for historic preservation. Eunice and I attended a lot of the meetings and watched it, and worked with DLCD staff. And so they came up with the various kind of specific rules or ways that cities have to go about adopting those. And then they also created a model code. Sometimes smaller cities that don't have planning staff or only have like one planning staff will just adopt the state's model code and not create their own. Salem doesn't usually do that. So those rules were finally adopted last week. And so that's what the headlines were about. Parking is part of it. It basically says that you can't require more than one parking space per unit for duplex, triplex, or fourplex. And so that's in line, luckily, with what we just did with our multifamily changes earlier this year, I think March 2020. So we already made those parking changes. We actually have more parking reductions than that, because you'll remember that the council eliminated parking for multifamily in downtown and along our core network. So we're already going to be in compliance with that. It's not going to make a change for us as far as how we look at 3 and 4 units. Of course, we're going to have to allow them now everywhere in all the single family zone land. That's not what our multifamily design project was about. It was about just the design of them where they were currently allowed in multifamily. So Eunice will be tackling that project as well. We're going to try to just do it with our Salem this year. So we're hoping by summertime, we might do it slightly separately, but at the same time that we will have a code amendment to bring forward to the Planning Commission and then to the council to make some slight changes. But we don't think we have to make too many changes, again, because we changed a lot of our code already earlier this year. So they've, they really dive deep into like what kind of design standards you can require. what kind of setbacks you can require. The real intent is whatever you require for a single family, you can't require any more for this other type of housing.
Gotcha.
And so it's basically just kind of duplicating. So there will be some code amendments that we'll have to do to implement that, but it should be good.
And this
Is
is
that a question, Commissioner Slater, or do you have a follow-up?
just a quick follow-up. So this applies to 1 through 4 unit dwellings, is that correct?
Yes, the bill also requires us to allow cottage clusters, which are like individual, little units. We have some in Salem. Most of them are from the 20s through the 40s until the zoning started prohibiting them. So you see those in older parts of town. And then it also requires us to allow townhouses. We already allow townhouses, but they're actually pretty hard to do in our single family zone. So we have to clean that up a bit to make it easier. And the parking, I believe, applies to all of those. So I'm pretty sure all of those, you can't do more than 1 per unit as your parking requirement.
Thank you. That was it.
Thank you, Commissioner Slater. Commissioner Pollack?
Okay, so I wanted to address what Commissioner Levine and Swikart talked about, about that. I actually don't think it's a good idea. And this is why. It's because the whole idea of administrative law was due process, not only procedure, but it's about rights. And the issue the whole thing was to avoid arbitrary and capricious decisions. So when you have a category that says in these categories, we're going to have a level of judgment of 3, but you say, but maybe this one is like a done deal. It's just such a slam dunk. Let's go through. What is that? Arbitrary and capricious. So, the thing is, it's a slippery slope. I mean, it seems like, and I know what it is. It's that, when it's such a done deal, you say, let's save the cost and think the cost, because the cost is really transferred over to the consumer and who's the ultimate end up purchaser. But the thing is that if you want people to respect the decisions that we make, we need to go along with and I'm talking with the lawyers in the room, including our new one, is that we can't just, it's a slippery slope. So I am totally against that whole thing. It didn't even sound like a good idea to me. Again, this is something that I did specialize in law school and even had additional work on this. And there's no way, because how beautiful I think the administrative law regulates agency decision making. I would not even entertain that idea.
Thank you for holding back, Commissioner Pollack.
Thank you.
Very well done. Commissioner McKinley.
This is on something else. If you want to continue on this topic, go ahead.
Oh, we go right ahead.
No, I'm finished.
You're finished?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to mention, sure. I was just going to mention, do we do elections at the beginning of the year or the end of the year? I can never remember.
We do them at the very first meeting. Yeah, your first meeting in January, you'll do elections. Okay. So that's a good reminder for Shelby to put it on the agenda. I also just wanted to say, for some of you that are new, you may not know this, in January and February, we put 3 meeting dates on, we schedule 3. The intent is not for you to have 3 meetings. The intent is to only have 2, but because of how the holidays fall, City Council bumps us, or it used to when we were in chambers. I guess maybe technically it doesn't matter on Zoom, but I go to City Council, so I can't be in 2 places at once. So what we do is we book the first 2 Tuesdays and then the 4th Tuesday, and then based on the cases and like what cases we have, then we pick what the 2 of the 3 dates are going to be. So there's no items for the 5th. There may or may not be one for the 12th. So we'll plan on having one on the 26th unless there's no cases. So that should be on Shelby's list when she sends it out, and it will be the same in February, just because we have those 2 Monday holidays that mess us up. So
thank you. That's why I was asking about that.
Yeah.
Lovely. Commissioner Schweikart.
So this may only relate to me, but I did, like months ago, submit my application request to
reappointment. Yes.
Reappointment. And now we're at the end of the year. So like,
I should have so you're done. No, I'm just kidding. The mayor, I should have told you, the mayor decided not to convene the boards and commissions appointments committee. I think that's what they're called. It's like a subcommittee until January. So normally they would convene in November or December and then consider all the applications for boards to appoint, and then they would look at reappointments, but they decided to push it to January. So they just said anyone that's available for reappointment can stay on until that decision is made in January. They haven't given me a January date. I've also never seen them not reappoint somebody that asks for reappointment. So
I'll be the first, I'm sure.
No. So I'm sure it's fine. So I
Okay,
will
just
I will
wondering.
let you, yes. And everyone that's eligible for reappointment has already submitted their request that they wanted to be reappointed. So if you couldn't remember if you did that, you all did. And so I'm sure it'll be fine. So
Perfect. Anything else for your report, Lisa?
Oh, I just wanted to mention something. Sorry. Zach sent out a shared recipe thing for the holidays. He mentioned that Planning Commission and HLC used to kind of have a little holiday get together. And so since that's not happening this year, there's a shared recipe PowerPoint. And so if anyone wants to go share a recipe for the holidays, we decided that next Wednesday, any recipes that were posted on that, we would just send out to everyone as like a final recipe document. So if you have any recipes you want to share, feel free to put that on the presentation that Zach sent out. It's not a spam email, it's a real email.
See, I thought it was a spam. I deleted it.
oh no.
Gosh.
Yeah, and for those of you that are new, we do normally have a holiday party with the HLC, and last year I think was probably our best one we had at the Reed Opera House. So it's a real bummer that we can't do that this year.
We look forward to next week.
Yeah.
I will say, just as an FYI to everybody, that because of the OneDrive protections, that when you go in to try to add a recipe, like first you enter an email address and then they'll send you a verification code. And just so you know, it sent the verification code to my spam folder. So in terms of being able to like get in and make edits to the PowerPoint, that it's just, there's that verification process. And so just in case the email gets sent to your spam folder when you're trying to access the PowerPoint, just letting you know. I let Zach know too. I emailed him today.
Okay, and if you guys don't want to do it on the PowerPoint, I was a little late to the game in planning this with them, but if you just want to email me a recipe, we can just combine it and make a document and send it out on Wednesday to everyone. So whatever you're comfortable with, if you want to just email me, that would be fine too.
Okay, that'll be easier for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shelby, for offering to do that. Moving on to comments for the good of the order. Any comments? I'm hoping everybody has a great holiday relative to what we can really do. Mine's going to be small. But any other comments for the good of the order? And I can't wait till we get back like in person. And I could actually, meet some of these commissioners like Commissioner Augustine and, it'll be good. So any other comments though for the good of the order? And welcome, Tom.
It looks like Commissioner Pollock rose her hand.
Commissioner Pollock.
I was seeing that since Commissioner McKinley is, basically using his time to do Christmas cards, that I hope I have one of those. He's been looking at envelopes the whole time.
He's multitasking.
It's called multitasking. You guys should look into it.
Yeah, very
I'll
good.
Get stuff done.
I'll be waiting for my card.
Any other comments? Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Very much, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Or happy holiday.